Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Fem Naruto Fell in Love with Prince of Desert Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Konoha was the best village to live in. If you were to ask everyone in Konoha, the villagers would say with pride that it was the only village that allowed the civilians to have a say of how the country should be run. The villagers weren't only proud of this, but they were also proud about how strong they were, and they boast about how their late fourth Hokage defeated the Kyuubi. Sadly, not everyone shares this same view. A prime example was Naruto Uzumaki, who would simply scoff at the villagers' words. The blonde believed that the way the village was ran was a mockery on how a Hokage should be, and in her eyes the villagers were monsters. Treating her like dirt and making her whole life miserable were one of the reasons why she believed that they were monsters. However, she would never say this to their face because, in her opinion, it would cause a lot more trouble than it was worth. If the blue-eyed could, she would run away from this village, but she couldn't, not because she can't, but she didn't have the heart to leave the kind old Hokage, a man she sees as her grandfather. At times, she did wish that she did leave the village and see the rest of the world. Becoming a ninja would fulfill that. She didn't simply join the academy because of the fame like the other kids, she simply joined to get out of the civilian council hands and of course to see the world, emphasis of the world bit. The Shinobi Council wasn't completely biased to her, and the Hokage could overrule them if things were to become bad. In terms of skill, Naruto was a very capable ninja. She was good in taijutsu and was average in terms of ninjutsu and chakra control, but had no talent in genjutsu. Her theory was good too, and she excelled in maths, but only because she had to manage her own money. She never intentionally caused trouble in class and only played pranks on the teachers that were biased to her. Poor Satsuki, he had been forced to quit after being her teacher for 1 year. There were times when she felt the adults were waiting for her to snap, as if they thought that she would kill them. It had taken her a while to figure out why they treated her the way they did. They thought that she was the Kyuubi, but she was not the monster. Never had she had the urge to kill. The monster would have killed them for the treatment, but tempting as it was, she wouldn't do such a thing. Hurting them would not solve her problems, it would have made it even worse, and she could understand why they treat her like this. You needed someone to blame for the people that you lost, and what better person to blame than the container? It was wrong to blame her, but it was understandable. She was better than them as well in terms of moral. She had the chance to kill Mizuki for all the times that he had sabotaged her learning, but she didn't. Killing him would prove their idea of her being that monster right. Iruka had been so kind to her, telling her that he didn't believe that she was the monster. To him, to recognize this fact made it seem the idea of them realizing the truth not to seem so silly. The Hokage had told her the same thing and it nearly made her cry. Sometimes she hated the fact that she was human. Crying never solved problems, they just made it worse. Naruto knew this really well, remembering all the times that she had cried to Kami about someone saving her from this hellhole. Nothing ever happened, and she realized soon after that crying would not solve any problems. Today was the Genin orientation day, and Naruto had chosen for once not to take her usual seat beside Sasuke, instead opting to take a seat beside the timid Hyuga heiress. It was normally an entertainment to sit beside him, watching as the girls in their class fight for his attention, but most of the time, those fangirls of his always seemed to pick on her, claiming that she had a crush on the boy. Insane they were, and it almost made her pity him, but keyword being almost. The bastard did deserve it. She also hadn't sat beside Hinata for a long time. It wasn't from the lack of trying, but Kiba kept stealing her seat beside her friend. Hinata was very gentle not to tell that mutt that she didn't want to sit beside her, but Naruto didn't complain. There was no way she wanted Hinata to change that aspect of herself. The sound of latecomers nearing the classroom and their voices made her wince. Glancing at Sasuke, Naruto curled her lips in amusement at the sight of the pale Uchiha looking even paler. It was no secret that the whole class had found it amusing to watch all the girls fighting over the Uchiha heir, the most amusing being Sakura and Ino. Would their obsession with him fade over time? Naruto asked herself as she watched the two girls argue over who got inside the room first. Predictably, those two will soon argue over who is going to sit beside Sasuke. Barely 4 minutes later, Sakura walked towards Sasuke and asked him if she could sit beside him, batting her eyelashes at him as she asked him. Naruto hid her mouth behind her hand to stop the urge to burst out into a fit of laughter when she saw Ino arguing with Sakura about how she deserved to sit beside Sasuke because she had been there first. I truly pity the poor bastard, Hinata. Naruto said to her friend. Who do you pity? Hinata asked, looking at her friend in confusion. Naruto pointed at Sasuke, who had been looking at her for some time to help him with his fangirls. He had to deal with those insane fangirls of his. Naruto. Hinata reprimanded, but the amused glint in her eyes told her that she didn't mind her choice of words. Naruto grinned and shrugged her shoulders at her only female friend in a way to suggest that it was only true. Which it was. Naruto glanced at Sasuke for the second time that day. She sighed at the pleading look on his face and reluctantly got up to save his ass. They weren't friends, but there was an understanding that she would help him manage the fangirls and he in turn would help her with the few fanboys that seemed to follow her. What they see in her, she would never know. Not once had she ever complimented them, and Kami help her if she had ever told them that she agreed to go out on a date with them. She would kiss Sasuke before doing something insane as that. That should tell you how bad it was. Hinata-chan, can you please make sure that no one steals my seat? The Hyuga heiress looked at her with confusion. I have to deal with Bubblegum and Ino Pig as usual. Hinata sighed and nodded in understanding. The two of you do realize that there is another empty seat beside Sasuke, Naruto drawled as she drew their attention towards her. The two rivals glared at her, but the blue-eyed girl ignored them. She pointed towards the other empty beside the raven-haired teen, who was now glaring at her. First off, who asked you, chubby? Secondly, it isn't the same. Ino argued. Yes. Sakura agreed. Curling her lips, Naruto leaned against the table and sighed. Their glare intensifies, now radiating weak killer intent, frightening a couple of the boys around them but not the blonde. The said blonde was now carefully looking at the seats before looking at the two girls in annoyance. I see no other way to solve this problem for you, Naruto answered stiffly. Unless one of you want to sit beside Shikamaru and Choji, so choose your seat now. The two girls looked at each other and reluctantly took their seats beside Sasuke. Sakura took her seat on Sasuke's left while Ino took a seat on his right. Neither of them were happy with this arrangement, but none more so than the raven-haired teen who had looked at her with anger for pointing it out to the two of them. Naruto rolled her eyes and said to him, you should suck it up like a man and deal with it. The raven-haired teen rolled his eyes and grunted. Naruto grinned at him before going back to her seat beside Hinata, not noticing the small blush on his face. I simply can't comprehend how you could stand up to them, Hinata said, frowning at the glares that Naruto was currently receiving from the raven-haired preteen's fangirls. I simply got used to it, Naruto answered as she leaned against her seat. Plus I can beat them up with my hands tied behind my back, she boasted. Hinata chuckled, smiling at how boastful her friend can be. It wasn't long before Iruka-sensei entered the classroom and all the genins' attention were at him. Their eager eyes were waiting for him to tell them which teams they were in, but to their disappointment their ex-sensei had started to talk to them about their upcoming duty as shinobi of Konohagakure. It had to be one of Iruka-sensei's longest and boring speeches that he had ever gave them. Several times she had spotted people dozing off, not including Shikamaru, the obligatory slacker. Finally the speech ended and the main event came, namely the team assignments, and none of the new genins were falling asleep. Naruto watched in boredom as various names were called and the genins in question reacted to their placement with either joy or disappointment, and a few times both. She waited for her name to come up. Finally. Team 7. Uzumaki Naruto. She perked up. Haruno Sakura. Naruto slammed her forehead against the table to the amusement of Hinata. And Uchiha Sasuke. I don't mean to be rude, Uruka-sensei, but why the hell am I paired up with Sasuke-tem over there? My marks are completely average and should put me along the halfway mark in the class, and I certainly don't understand how the three of us would work with us not getting along. And wouldn't it have been smarter to pair the dead last with the rookie of the year? Naruto asked, looking at Uruka in anger and frustration. Uruka rubbed the back of his neck as he thought of how to answer the blonde's question, while the other genins looked at him in curiosity to answer the inquiry. If we were speaking from placement in class-wise, you would be correct, however we had to take in account of skills and abilities. Your abilities are the reason why you were paired with Sasuke and Sakura. He answered. Naruto shook her head before reluctantly sitting down. She had been hoping that she would be paired with Hinata, and Naruto didn't want her friend to deal with any strangers or worse, Kiba. What could she do? Threaten the Hokage by stealing his porn? That was tempting, but she wasn't insane to do that. In the afternoon, we will introduce your Junin senseis, said Uruka once everyone was placed on a team. Until then, take a break. The students started to disperse, discussing the pros and cons of their new squads. Sasuke rose silently and walked out the door, Sakura following him like the fangirl that she was. Sasuke pretended she didn't exist. Naruto frowned at this scene. This was in no way a good thing. The three of them were supposed to act like a team. Maybe it would be better after a few missions. Hey, a girl can a dream, can't she? They had been waiting for the past 2 hours and 55 minutes, not that Naruto has been counting the moment when they meet their sensei. It wouldn't be bad if she had her friends with her, but they had left an hour ago with their sensei, leaving her with Sasuke and Sakura as company. It wasn't that bad if she admitted to herself, since she wasn't in a hurry to talk to them. After all, who would want to talk to their teammate when they had a good book to read? Not her, that was for sure. Where the hell is our sensei? Sakura growled. Looking up from her book, Naruto saw that Sakura was pacing back and forth at the door. Sighing, the blonde wondered if the lateness was to be expected from their sensei. How the hell am I supposed to know? I am in the same boat as the two of you, Naruto said as she returned her eyes back on the page that she was currently reading. If you are so bored, why don't you just go to the library and get a book or check for some scrolls to read? I am certain that Uruka-sensei have some scrolls lying around here. It was in that moment that the door slid open to reveal a silver-haired man wearing a Jonin vest, his forehead protector covering his left eye. His visible eye seized them up as if he was deciding whether or not they were worth his time. Well, my first impression of you guy is that I hate you, the Jonin said. Sasuke and Sakura sweat dropped while Naruto snorted. Is there anything funny, blonde? The Jonin asked. The blue-eyed girl looked up from her book and stared at the Junin, her eyes were lit in amusement. That should be our line, since obviously our first impression on you isn't that great considering how late you are. Naruto baka, shut up. Sakura cried, her fist rose to strike the back of Naruto's head. The blue-eyed girl narrowed her eyes at this movement and leaned out of the way as soon as Sakura brought it down. Sakura lost her balance and fell over. She rubbed her head as she looked up at the blonde girl, whose eyes were now filled with boredom as if it was child's play. You know, Sakura, if I could avoid it once, then I could avoid it again and again, Naruto said as she yawned at her. The pink-haired girl got annoyed at her teammate's words. How dare she say it like she was dumb? She had better marks than her during theory tests. Don't speak to me as if I am dumb. I got better marks than you did. Naruto didn't blink at Sakura's words, instead she remained impassive. I am not speaking as if you are dumb, I am stating an obvious fact. Even a smart person will overlook the obvious, but remember, we are teammates and that means you do not hit me, she explained, giving a pointed look at both of her teammates. Which means you don't piss me off, and I might not make any snide comments about you, but only when you prove to me that you truly don't deserve it. So that is Uzumaki, Kakashi thought. Her file had said that she was boastful, of average intelligence and skills. But this kid seems to be humble and slightly above intelligence, and I don't know about skill, as I haven't seen any so far. All right, you three. Meet on top of the academy in 5 minutes, Kakashi said before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Naruto blinked at the puff of smoke and then put her hands behind her head. As tempting as it is to do as he says and meet him in 5 minutes, I prefer to be late in meeting him. Anyone up to join me? Asked Naruto, picking her stuff up. Sasuke rolled his eyes at her and dragged her to meet their sensei. What the bloody hell are you doing, bastard? Naruto yelled as she glared at the Uchiha heir in anger. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at her and said, if I didn't drag you here, you would have skipped the introduction with our sensei just so you can teach him a lesson. Can't deny that. The Uchiha clan heir finally let go of her ear as soon as they were on top of the academy. Naruto rubbed her ear and glared at the smirking Sasuke, cussing under her breath at him. The very least you could have done was not to pull my ears that hard, said Naruto as she took her seat beside Sasuke. Well, let us begin with introducing yourselves, Kakashi said. You do realize that is a very bored topic, Naruto pointed out. What do you want us to talk about? Kakashi shrugged his shoulders and suggested, how about your likes, dislikes, your dreams for the future and things like that? Blonde, you are up first. Naruto glared at Kakashi for singling her out. Fine, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like reading, painting, cooking and I dislike people who doesn't take their job seriously as well as people who humiliate others to make themselves feel stronger, she sighed. I also dislike traitors. My dream is to see the world and become a strong kunoichi. Kakashi grinned behind her mask. She certainly has some spunk. She insulted both of her teammates without coming out and saying it. All right, Bubblegum, you are next, Kakashi said as he ignored the feeble glare from Sakura. Why yes. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like. She trailed off and glanced at Sasuke. To both Naruto and Sasuke's chagrin, the pink-haired girl squealed before continuing. I dislike Naruto. It is a two-way street, Bubblegum, Naruto said, leaning against the step. Sakura glared at her for interrupting her, but the blonde arched her eyebrows and rolled her eyes. As I was saying, my dream is to. Again Sakura trailed off as her face went red. The blonde patted the black-haired boy's back in sympathy. He arched his eyebrows and scowled at her. Sometimes, she truly did pity the boy for having so many pathetic fangirls. Why is she even a ninja? I swear to Kami that they gave me her as a punishment. Kakashi thought. All right, let us see what emo boy has to say. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are a lot of things I dislike and I don't really like anything and I can't really call it a dream. But I have an ambition, the resurrection of my clan and to kill a certain man. Sasuke said, his fingers covering the bottom half of his face. Naruto grimaced. She certainly had no idea on what had went through his mind when he found his whole clan being murdered and no one knew what exactly happened that day. It was however understandable that he wanted to murder the man that killed his family. Many people would have done the same thing if given the same chance. Even she would be like that too if she knew what happened to her parents. Wait, sensei, what about you? Sakura asked, snapping Naruto back into reality. My name is Hayate Kakashi and I have no desire to tell you my likes and dislikes. My dream for the future, and I have lots of hobbies. Kakashi answered, smiling at the three speechless genins. All he told us was his name. Sakura whispered to her teammates. The blue-eyed girl wrinkled her nose and said, very true, but I suppose that we will learn more about him since he is our sensei. I suppose so, but still can't he tell us more about himself? Naruto lips curled into an amused smile at her teammates' questions but didn't comment about the question. Sakura raised her eyebrows in surprise while Sasuke shook his head at her. It seemed all that arguing that they had made him learn well enough that she doesn't want to comment. What is so funny about what I just said, Naruto? Yes, Naruto-chan, what is so funny about what Sakura had said? Kakashi asked, looking at his blonde student in amusement and laziness. First off, you don't have permission to call me Naruto-chan. Coming from you it sounds all perverted. I found it funny that you asked us to tell us all these things about ourselves and yet you don't give any in return, Naruto yawned. I was expecting to know a little bit more from my sensei, but I shouldn't expect anything from a lazy sensei. That wounds me, Naruto-chan. Naruto glared at him and said in a sweet voice, "Call me Naruto-chan again and I will hurt you so badly that you will never look at a woman the same way again." He gulped and vigorously nodded his head. She definitely reminded him of her mother and Tsunade when she said this. Alright, now so far for the introductions. Tomorrow we will start our duties as shinobi. The blonde-haired girl lazily looked up at the sky and asked, "What kind of duties may I ask?" "First we are going to do something with just the four of us," Kakashi answered cheerfully. The short blonde girl returned her attention to the sliver-haired man and lazily asked, "Can you please go into further detail about that? Because you can't honestly expect us to be prepared if you do not give us any details." The slivered-haired Jonin chuckled and answered, "Survival training." Naruto arched her eyebrows at him and repeated, "Survival training." She glanced at her teammates and was happy to see that she was not the only one confused. "Why is our first duty a training? We have had enough training at the academy." Naruto scoffed at Sakura's words. The said pink-haired girl raised her eyebrows at her teammate. "Do you have something to say, Naruto?" Sakura screeched. "Of course I do," Naruto said, yawning at her angry teammate. The academy had putted more emphasis on book smarts than on physical training, which is a mockery of how any soldier, ninja or not, should be. Kakashi could see the stream rolling off the pink-haired girl's head. He looked at Naruto, who wasn't fazed from the anger from the girl and was now sitting there like she hadn't said something wrong. "How can you say that? If you believed that, then why now have you decided to put effort into studying?" The blonde smiled distastefully at her teammate and answered, "Just because I have those beliefs do not mean I wish to fail in the exams. Without knowledge, people can." She shook her head. "I am just saying that in terms of being a ninja, you need to focus as well on the physical aspects. If you don't, then you die, simple as that." What do you mean?" Naruto didn't answer her teammate's question, deciding that she had already spoken too much. She had already spoke about her disgust of the academy and that was bad enough, but to explain how it can get them killed would be pushing the line and Naruto does not want to get into trouble with them. Kakashi was looking at the blonde-haired girl in front of him with interest. Maybe this bunch of genins had a chance, but it all goes down to tomorrow's test. As much as I like hearing you guys argue, I still have to tell you about the survival training, Kakashi said, drawing their attention back to him. "This isn't in normal training, this time I am your opponent." The blonde-haired girl's eyes twitched at this piece of information before replacing her expression with one of impassiveness, making it hard for him to read her emotions. Her teammates in the other hand were easy to read. Sasuke was brooding and Sakura was nervous. "What is it?" Sakura asked. Kakashi chucked, causing the three genins to look at him in confusion. "What is so funny, sensei?" Well, it is just that when I tell you this you guys are totally going to freak out," Kakashi explained. "And why would we freak out?" Naruto asked. "Of the 27 graduates, only 9 will be chosen to become a genin and the rest will be sent back to the academy. This training is a very difficult exam with a failure rate of over 66%. Kakashi explained, enjoying the shock looks on the genins' faces. "That does make sense," Naruto said softly. "It explains why 18 kids from the year before was sent back, but it does not explain the exam that we took before. The exams that your class took was one that weeded out the ones that aren't meant to become genins yet, it was an elimination process." Kakashi explained, and the three kids were troubled at this new piece of information. "Anyway, tomorrow you have to show your real skills on the training ground and bring all the shinobi tools you have," Kakashi suggested. "Oh, and skip breakfast, you might throw up." Naruto simply frowned and thought to herself that there was something wrong with this test. He tells them not to eat breakfast, the most important meal of the day, that told her that he was planning to make them be at their weakest, but why? Well, whatever the reason was, she was not skipping breakfast. "You are late," Naruto blinked her eyes at her pink-haired teammate and then scanned the area to see if their sensei arrived. Scowling, she realized that her plan to be even more late than their sensei had failed. Maybe it had been a better idea for her to be 3 hours late like him. You are not going to make some smartass comment? Sakura asked, disturbed at how silent the blonde was. Why bother? It is just so exhausting for me to say something this early in the morning. The blonde answered, lying down on the ground to have a well-deserved nap. It is 9 o'clock in the morning. Sakura exclaimed. The petite blonde looked at her teammate in annoyance. Her alarm clock had woken her at 6 o'clock in the morning, which was 2 hours earlier than she had been expecting. How could she have been so forgetful in changing the time on when she gets up? Oh yeah, she had stayed the whole night mulling over what Kakashi was planning to do. Sasuke would have rolled his eyes at the blonde words but chose not, as it would mean that he was paying attention to their conversation. So do you guys got a plan on how to do this? Naruto asked, knowing that any chance of getting a nap would be ruined by the pink banshee. They blinked their eyes at her and she sighed in frustration. Why would we need a plan? We don't know what he is planning. Sakura pointed out. Naruto shrugged her shoulders and said, that is very true, but we need to be prepared for anything. What do you mean? And why should I explain myself? I believe that my comment speaks for myself. Naruto retorted. Besides, if I explain to you, the most likely thing to happen is that you would simply ignore my explanation. Don't speak like that to Sasuke-kun. Sakura yelled, glaring at the blonde girl in front of her. I am only simply stating the truth, Bubblegum. Be Bubblegum. Why do you always call me Bubblegum? Sakura asked. Naruto nodded and explained, well, Pinky is just so overrated from the beginning, so Bubblegum will do, seeing as it suits you. She counted till 10 before smirking at the angry look on Sakura's face when she realized that she had just insulted her hair. Naruto! Sakura screamed, clenching her hands into a fist. She sighed and counted to 20 to calm down. Becoming angry at the blonde would do her no good, besides Sasuke would absolutely dislike her if he knew how loud her voice was. Yes, Bubblegum, Naruto asked innocently. The pink-haired girl eyebrows twitched at her words and it was taking all her willpower not to hit the girl in front of her. Sasuke-kun. Do not call me that. Sakura said through gritted teeth. Why not? You and Ino had called me so many bad names and titles, in fact let me name a few, Naruto said, smiling evilly at her. I believe that you called me chubby, which I am not, seeing as I am thin, dumb blonde, but how can I be dumb when I wasn't the dumbest in the class? Let's not forget my personal favorite, a stalker, which I am surprised seeing as unlike you guys, I never once tried stalk any of the boys in the class home or watch while they're taking a bath. How do you know that? Sakura asked, knowing that she and the other girls had not once seen the blonde with them. Sasuke turned green at this piece of information and scooted away from Naruto. I didn't, Naruto admitted, grinning at them. But thank you for confirming the rumors that Izumi had started. Sakura turned red from embarrassment for being caught red-handed and angry for being tricked. Really, then how do you know so much about everyone in our year? I mean, how can you know so much about us when you don't talk to anyone except Hinata? Sakura yelled. Who says that I know them that well? I am not familiar with any one of them. I only know things that are common knowledge. Yeah, right. Sakura scoffed. Good morning, guys, Kakashi said, not noticing the tension between Sakura and Naruto. You're late, Sakura yelled. The sliver-haired Jonin didn't acknowledge the pink banshee outburst, and Naruto respect for the man raised, but not that much. Still, anyone that can ignore Sakura's loud voice was someone that she should give a little respect to. The sliver-haired man didn't say anything, instead he put an alarm clock on a nearby log. The three genins looked at the clock in confusion and then to their sensei, wondering why they needed a clock for survival training. Okay, it is set for noon, the masked man announced. He showed them 2 bells tied with strings. Here are 2 bells. He said it like they didn't know it themselves. Your task is to take these from me before the time is up. Those who don't have a bell by noon, gets no lunch. I will not only tie you to one of those stumps, but I will also eat right in front of you. Sakura and Sasuke's stomach grumbled while Naruto looked at them in surprise and amusement. Well, isn't it a good thing that I ate my breakfast? She said, causing her teammate to scowl at her. I told you that you couldn't eat breakfast. Kakashi said sharply. Why didn't you listen to me? The blonde shook her head and looked at the sliver-haired Jonin in amusement before answering. First off, you said that we shouldn't, emphasis on shouldn't. Naruto then gave a pointed look to her teammates and continued. Second of all, I don't respect a teacher that shows up extremely late. Besides, I was starving. You really expect me to starve myself? Yes. Sakura yelled. Naruto blinked. I am a lot of things, but I am not going to starve myself until I see a logical point of doing so. Well then, I guess if you are at full strength, then I don't have to go so easy on you, Kakashi said with a hidden smile. Sakura gulped while Sasuke looked excited at this piece of information, but Naruto simply rolled her eyes at him. I would look forward to it then, Naruto said dryly. Through the chances of you not going easy on us are slim. Really now? Why so? Kakashi asked, already knowing the reason why but interested to know what Naruto had to say. As Shikamaru would say, explaining would be too troublesome. Naruto answered. Maybe it would be best if she stayed away from the Nara heir. She didn't want to get any more of his bad habits rubbed in her. You really spend too much time with him, Sasuke commented. Kakashi noticed a hint of jealousy as he said this, and he wondered if the rumors of him being gay was wrong. The blonde nodded and Sakura looked at lost at seeing how close the black-haired boy was with Naruto. All right then, Kakashi said, returning their attention back to him. You only have to get one bell, and seeing as there are only two, one of you will definitely be tied to the stump. Isn't that obvious? Naruto mumbled. Kakashi ignored her comment and continued, and the person who doesn't take a bell fails, so at least one of you will be sent back to the academy. The blue-eyed girl frowned. There was something fishy about that sentence. The academy instructors had not only put emphasis on the mental aspects of ninjas but of teamwork. Also, why would they put them in teams of 3? There was something odd about this. If you want, you can use shurikens and kunais, but you won't succeed unless you come at me intending to kill. Kakashi said, noticing that Naruto had quickly picked up that there was something wrong with what he had been saying. He silently thought to himself, when this team fails, he would take the blonde as his apprentice. This girl was a natural with reading underneath the underneath. But, you will be in danger, Sakura protested. Naruto laughed out loud at her teammates' words, causing everyone to look at her in surprise. They waited till she stopped laughing before asking her what was so funny. I am sorry, Sakura, Naruto said, wiping the tear away from her eyes. But you honestly think a mere rookie genin can actually hurt a jonin? I am sorry, but no rookie genin can defeat a jonin. You won't know until you try, Kakashi pointed out. The blonde-haired girl nodded in agreement at his word and said, that may be true, but I doubt that a genin can defeat a jonin. She shrugged her shoulders at them. Now let us. He paused and they waited anxiously for him to continue. Begin, Kakashi shouted. Sasuke and Sakura vanished into the woods. You know you were supposed to hide, Kakashi said, looking at Naruto, who didn't move from her spot. Oh, I know, Naruto admitted. She scratched her chin and gave him a calculating look. But hiding from you, as I know, would be very pointless. I bet you know where Sasuke and Bubblegum is hiding, she grinned and continued. Besides, I want to see how I measure against you. Naruto decided that she had already spoken enough and that she should start attacking him. She started to run towards the Junin but slowed down when she saw that the masked man was pulling something out of his pouch. She looked at him with weariness and curiosity, wondering what he was planning to do. Shinobi fighting lesson number 1, Taijutsu, Kakashi said. I will teach you about it. Taijutsu meant hand-to-hand combat, but yet the sliver-haired Junin was pulling out a weapon. Something wasn't right. He was planning something, but what? Surely he couldn't be thinking of using a weapon against them. No, maybe he was trying to throw her off guard. Her question was soon answered when she saw Kakashi took out a familiar orange book. Her eyes twitch at the sight of the familiar orange book in front of her. That man was dead. She crunched her hand and gave him a sweet smile that got the silver-haired man to shudder in fear. I hope that you had enjoyed your life here on Earth, Naruto said, grinning madly at him. Because it is about to end. Oh, don't worry, it won't make a difference against you guys, Kakashi said, trying his best to ignore the murderous look on the blonde face. After all, what can a mere genin do? Besides, Naruto doesn't have any skills that he thinks is a threat. Naruto didn't say anything, deciding that it was time for the open pervert gets his punishment. She ran towards him and lunged at him in his stomach, but he blocked it with very little difficulty. Naruto didn't give and had now twisted her leg to give the silver-haired man a kick, but he blocked her kick. He winced in pain as Naruto pushed her leg even harder. The girl wasn't Tsunade in terms of strength, but it was close to it. It didn't seem like the girl was going to give up. Naruto had given up fighting with punches and kicks and had now gone into unorthodox way of fighting. The blonde-haired girl was now doing a cartwheel kick at him. He dodged the attacks with a little difficulty and he was impressed with the girl's flexibility. He barely blocked the somersault kick that she had done. Why don't you give up? Kakashi asked as Naruto tried to punch him by his stomach. He blocked it and his eye widened in surprise as the girl did a high sidekick to his face, managing to land a hit. I don't give up, Naruto answered. I am as stubborn as a mule. And in my vocabulary, I don't have a word called giving up. Seeing Kakashi was distracted, the blonde girl now started her attack against Kakashi. She didn't hold back her punches or kicks at him, wishing revenge for reading the vile book in front of them. Naruto soon stopped punching and started to ponder about what Kakashi had said before. She definitely found something weird about this test. The people with the bells will pass while the people without the bells won't pass. It sounded so simple and so good to be true that it was suspicious. Why put them in teams of 3? Teams of 3, teams of 3, the answer was right there, but what? No, first she had to think of what she knew so far about this test. It sounds simple enough that the person who doesn't get the bells won't have lunch and will be sent back to the academy. But it seemed so wrong because they were put in a team of 3. Why put them in a team of 3 if one of them will be sent back to the academy? It just didn't make sense. The answer lay on the team of 3. The better questions she should be asking are, why are they in a team of 3? Teams of 3, teams of 3, of course teamwork. Naruto blinked her eyes and stared at the groaning sensei. He purposely pitted them against each other, telling them not to eat breakfast and tying them to the log if they didn't get a bell. It was a trap. It was so obvious and yet they haven't figured it out. Didn't they say the best way to hide things was by hiding it in the most obvious of places? It seemed that saying goes for tests too. But first, she needed to get a few things out of her chest. Ever read that vile, horrendous book in front of me again and I will make sure that I will find a way to. Naruto splatted. Kakashi didn't answer, deciding that it was time that he formulates a plan of revenge of his own. It would be embarrassing if people knew that he had been beaten up by a mere genin. He looked down at his belt and noticed to his surprise that the blonde hadn't taken his bells. I noticed that you didn't take the bells, why is that? He asked in curiosity. It is because I have an idea on how to pass this test. Naruto said, flickering her eyes to the area around them as she tried to figure out where her teammates might be hiding. However, I should warn you that my teammates do not know what it is until it bites them in the ass. Mind saying it? Kakashi asked, trying to distract as he thought of a way to get his revenge against the girl. I rather not, Naruto admitted. She looked at him in amusement and waved at him. He frowned as he watched Naruto waving at him, and before long she had run off into the woods. He walked towards the direction that Naruto had left. He could sense 8 or 9 separate chakra sources around her, and one of them was the real her. The girl was good at utilizing the shadow clones despite only learning it after one day. This one had a lot of potential. He frowned as he remembered how she waved at him and he wonders what she had done. What was she planning? Maybe she had planned a trap. But how can she plan a trap with so little time? He was amazed when he saw the tripwire. It was good, better to the work of what a new genin can do, but he was a Junin, so he knew better. He stepped over it cautiously and almost put his foot down before he noticed the slight wave in the ground. He looked back at the buried tripwire he had almost set off and mused that the trap would have fooled most Chunins. He found a safe place to advance towards the forest, and was about to take another step further when he heard a deep rumbling in the woods. A great green serpent with foul yellow smoke pouring from its mouth crashed through the trees towards Kakashi. His mind shut down and he immediately tried to find ninjutsu that can destroy the beast, but it was too late because a minute later, shuriken rained down from various angles, forcing Kakashi to quickly do the hand signs and strike the ground, earth-style, rocky shield. He sighed in relief as the attack slowly dimmed down. He rubbed his chin as he thought about how close that it was. It seemed like the reports about her being skilled in traps were an understatement. He grinned and wondered how skilled the other two were. Naruto in her hiding spot grinned. She had gathered a lot of information about the sliver-haired Junin fighting style and his one weakness. The only thing left for her to do now is to convince her teammates that they needed to work together. Since when was Naruto that strong? Sasuke asked himself from his hiding spot. I am not. I am just more sneakier than you. A voice behind him whispered dryly. Sasuke whirled around, his hand darting for a kunai. It is just me, Sasuke. Naruto, what the hell? The blonde smirked at him and said, I got plan on how we can pass the test. Sasuke snorted. I don't need your help. You do realize that I had outsmarted Kakashi, right? Through in his defense, he hadn't really thought that I was that skilled in traps. Naruto pointed out. Sasuke sighed and quietly asked, why didn't you take the bells when you had the chance? I thought that you wanted to be a ninja so badly, don't you? Oh, I do, don't you worry, Naruto assured him. It is just that I figure out the real purpose of this test while I was fighting with Kakashi-sensei. Real purpose? Sasuke asked, raising his eyebrows at her. Naruto nodded. The two of them frowned when they heard Sakura's scream before shrugging their shoulders when they realized that Kakashi must have gotten to her. Why put us in a team of 3, Sasuke-tem? Naruto asked. Why would they put us in a team of 3 when in the end, one of us is going back? How the hell am I supposed to know? I think he wants us to work together. The blonde explained. Do you honestly think that one genin can beat a Junin? You nearly did, Sasuke pointed out, scowling at her. Naruto blinked her eyes at him and said, I got him by surprise, and the next time I attack he wouldn't be too quick to put down his guard. She grinned at him and continued. Don't you want to pass? Working together will make the job a hell lot easier. Why should I work with you? Well, working together will make getting the bells so much easier. Naruto pointed out. Secondly, he wouldn't be expecting us to be working together. Listen, do you want to pass or not? Naruto asked Sasuke, crossing her arms at him. Because I certain am, and didn't you find it odd at all? The raven-haired teen curled his mouth and leaned against the tree. His black eyes flicker at her and then to the clearing behind her, frowning at her. He reluctantly nodded his head at her. They put us in a team of 3 for a reason. Naruto pointed out as she crossed her arms at him. And have you ever seen a 2-man squad? I certainly haven't heard of any or read any from the books. Then what is the point of making us fight against ourselves? Sasuke asked as he reluctantly realized what Naruto was trying to say. If he want to make us work as a team, then why would he set this all up? Naruto pondered at his question and admitted. I honestly don't know, but I do know that none of us can defeat him because let's face it, we are genins and he is a Junin. Chances of one of us defeating Kakashi-sensei are practically 0, but the chances of us working together increases the probability. How certain can you be? Sasuke asked. Naruto smiled and answered, I am not that certain, but I am also thinking from a stagiest point of view. If you were Kakashi, would you think that we would work together? Sasuke pondered at her question and answered reluctantly, no. Why not? Because we would be competing against each other. Sasuke answered as if it was obvious. How would he expect us to work together when we all want the bells? Precisely, Naruto said. We would have an advantage over him and 2 is better than 1. Sasuke sighed at Naruto. He was reluctant to work with her but he wanted to pass and looking from the blonde girl point of view, she was right. The chances of them getting the bells individually were low and Kakashi was a Junin as Naruto had pointed out that meant he had years of experience compared to them. It was reckless to go against him without any help and to think he had been planning to do such a thing. Alright, what's the plan? Naruto grinned and answered, first we will have to get Sakura and after that this is what we will do. Kakashi looked up from his book as Naruto approached him. Are you going to work together to get the bells? Kakashi asked. You do realize that even if you get the bells, one of you will fail. Naruto hesitated before nodding her head. Her eyes held a glint of amusement and he started to feel weary. The trap that she made was not one that any genin can do but the girl was a prankster. Generally prankster was good at trap making and Naruto was no exception. I know that but as they say if you failed once, try and try again. Naruto answered happily. And as I said before I don't know when to give up. You do realize that you got 15 minutes left? Kakashi asked. So less talking and more fighting. The blonde glanced at her teammates and nodded her head at them. He arched his eyebrow in surprise. The 3 of them are working now and he wonders which one of them suggested to work together. The grin on the blonde girl's face suggested that it was her that suggested doing this. Naruto lunged at Kakashi and he immediately blocked her high kick. He frowned when he felt another chakra source behind him and he blocked the incoming punch from his other hand. He grimaced when he saw that it was a clone of Naruto. He hadn't been expecting her to use the shadow clones in the fight. You are as unpredictable as they say you are. Kakashi said. I hadn't expected a genin like you to be using shadow clones, very impressive. Thank you. Naruto said as she grinned at him. The blonde lunged at him but only for him to block her attack. The girl gathered her chakra to her legs to stop herself from falling. She silently gestured for the other shadow clones to attack him before going to attack him. Kakashi blocked and dodged the attacks, never noticing the smirk on Naruto's face as she attacked him. One of them even attacked him from behind but that one quickly disappeared. He could feel himself being forced to go to the direction of the river. Suddenly one of the clones reached out for the bells but only managed to make a jingle. He had quickly blocked the attack before the girl had been able to get the bells. Kakashi hated to admit this but the girl was good for a new genin, her taijutsu was ready at Chunin level. The girl suddenly stopped attacking and Kakashi was confused. Had she gotten the bells while he wasn't looking? No, he would have noticed, so why would she be grinning at him? No matter how hard he thinks, Kakashi couldn't figure out why the 2 Naruto was grinning at him. Then one of the clones beside her that he had been fighting dispelled and in their place, it was Sasuke and Sakura, who held his precious book. The pink-haired girl was grinning viciously as she handed the book to Naruto. Kakashi-sensei, I will admit that you are sneaky. Naruto said as she dangled his book in disgust. But I am even sneakier than you. After all, you never noticed Sakura stealing your book while I was fighting you or that I switch with Sasuke halfway through the battle. Now, Kakashi-sensei, we will give you back your disgusting booze if you pass us. Sakura said, grinning evilly at him. Nobody read that disgusting book in front of her and gets away with it. And if you try something, Sasuke-kun will burn it. To emphasize this, Sasuke was already at the hand seal that was commonly used for fire jutsus. Kakashi reined his racing heart under control. No way was he going to show these genins that he was panicking. He simply couldn't afford to do anything that would endanger his precious book. So he did what any man would do, he tried playing cool. And, why should I care? He asked as disinterestedly as he managed. I could buy another one anytime. Yes, you could, Naruto said as she crossed her arms at him. But I believed that this book holds a much sentimental value than any of the ones that you could have buy. I also took a liberty of noticing that this book has the author's autograph with a personal dedication. You could buy a new one but it will never hold the same value. Kakashi knew that he was in a corner. There were only 2 options to do, Either do as the genin said and pass them or allow them to burn the book. Neither of them seemed to be a good option, but he will be damned if he allowed his book to be burned by them. You pass. Kakashi yelled as he held out his hands in surrender. Now give me back my book. Naruto grinned and threw his book at him. Kakashi immediately caught the book and started to hug the book, scaring the three genins. Sakura and Naruto's eyebrows twitch at the scene while Sasuke started to feel gross out as he watched their sensei started talking about Precious. The real purpose of this test was to see if the three of you could work together as a team. Kakashi started to explain to them as he put his book in the pouch while the genin started to eat lunch. And I am proud to say that the three of you had learned this. That was a stupid test then. Naruto commented. Kakashi eyebrows twitch at her words while Sakura gaped at Naruto's ability to talk back at a teacher. Sasuke simply grunted as he ate his lunch silently. The blonde girl knew that grunt meant that he agreed with her about the test being stupid. And how is the test stupid? You can't expect a new genin team to work together. Naruto explained. It took me nearly a whole hour to figure this aspect of the test, but only because I just found it how odd the test was. Why was the test odd to you, Naruto? Never seen a two-man squad in my life, and Iruka-sensei said that teams are a three-man squad or something like that. Never paid attention to him when he had long boring speeches. I can't imagine why. Sasuke mumbled. Naruto rolled her eyes at them and thought that just maybe that Team 7 wouldn't be such a bad team to be placed in. Just maybe, the team might become her family. It had been a month since Team 7 had officially became genin. The whole month had been filled them doing a lot of D-rank missions, which were more like summer jobs than missions. Not that Naruto was complaining, the blonde girl needed the money. Now, they were returning from their recent mission, which was capturing Tora, the cat that belonged to the fire daimyo wife. The three genin looked stunned at the abuse the cat went through as its owner smothered it with love, much to the animal's dismay. Iruka handed the Hokage another D-rank mission for the team to complete. Now, Kakashi's Team 7, your next duty is babysitting an elder's grandson, shopping in the neighboring village, and help with the potato digging. No way. Hell no. No thank you. I want us to do a more challenging mission. These missions are something you would do for a summer job. Naruto said angrily, crossing her arms at the Hokage. Kakashi sighed while Sakura banged her head and Sasuke silently nodded in agreement. I was wondering when Naruto was going to snap. Kakashi had to admit to himself that Naruto, while the most reasonable one between the three, was also the quickest to lose patience and temper. He noticed Iruka stood up to scold his student. You idiot. You are just a rookie. Everyone starts off with the simple duties and works their way up. These are jobs that an academy student can do. These jobs are a waste to a ninja. Honestly, how does carrying the grocery consider a ninja mission? Hell, I will be more than happy to do a simple escort mission. Naruto, that's enough, knock it off. Kakashi bopped his student on top of her head, making her glares heatedly at him. Sarutobi pulled his pipe out of his mouth and looked at the angry blonde nursing the bump on her head. Each request is written down on these lists and divided into an A, B, C, D ranking based on difficulty. The village is also divided based on skill. Staring with me to the Junins, Chunins and Genins. The missions are then handed out by us at the top to ninjas based on their abilities. And if the duty is completed successfully, we receive payment from the client. You guys just recently became genin. D-rank missions are perfect for you. The Hokage, happy with his explanation, looked to see the look of understanding on Naruto's face. Instead he saw her talking with her team. Now I am thinking of painting the Hokage mountain, but I am uncertain. What do you think I should paint today? Are you even listening? I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. Kakashi scratched the back of his head at the awkwardness of being caught not paying attention. Naruto apparently felt none of that awkwardness. I already know this, Hokage Oji-san, but that doesn't mean I am supposed to tolerate it. Naruto answered firmly. I am not the same little girl that caused mischief when given the chance. I have grown a lot since last month. Naruto crossed her arms and sighed. There was a huge chance that she was going to be scolded for her behavior towards the Hokage. Kakashi was glad that Naruto hadn't shouted at the Hokage because he had been sure that several times that he seen the girl ready to explode at the old Hokage. Very well, since you put it that way, Naruto. I will permit you to attempt a C-rank mission usually reserved for Chunin ninja. He is actually giving in to my demands. Naruto thought as she gave a stunned look to the Hokage. She hadn't expected him to give in to her demands so easily, but who cares? Finally, she was going to get some action. You will protect a certain individual. As long as it isn't some annoying man, then I doesn't give a damn. I will even be happy with a merchant. You are not protecting a merchant, I'll perform the introductions right away. Uruka, please invite him in. The door opened and a tall man above middle age walked in, a bottle of sake in his hand. What's this? They are all a bunch of super brats. Especially the shortest one with the super stupid looking face. Are you really a ninja? Hey. Naruto growled and was about to go hit the man for the insult, but only to be stopped by Kakashi. Let me go. Let me go. Let me kill the son of a bitch. Wrong, Naruto. No killing the old man you're being paid to protect. You sure that girl is a ninja? Do I really have to place my life in her hands? He looked with disbelief towards the Hokage. Kakashi stepped in to defend his student's honor. While she may not look like it to Tazuna-san, Naruto here is very good at trap making that can rival most Chunins. The Hokage and Kakashi could see Tazuna's eyes widen at hearing this. Not only that, but I am an elite ninja and will be coming along too. So no worries. Tazuna looked at the blonde girl and didn't know whether to believe the one-eyed ninja. He knew ninjas could do amazing things like breathe fire, walk on walls, and stuff like that, but could that little blonde shrimp really have that much skill? He brushed it off and decided the brats needed to know who they were protecting. I am Tazuna, a world-renowned bridge builder. Until I safely back in my own country, where I'll be working on my next masterpiece, you'll be expected to protect me with your lives. Kakashi turned to his team and smiled at them. Okay team, meet at the South Gate tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock and don't be late. Pack for at least a month. Naruto sighed and quietly thought that this was going to be a long month, a month of testing her patience. But she was fulfilling her dream, and who knows, just maybe she has a chance of not killing the client. Fat chance of her not doing that to the client, but a girl can dream. It was nearly 10 o'clock when she arrived to the gates. Her two teammates were already waiting for her. The two other genin looked at her with curiosity. Sakura was the first one to speak. Why are you so excited today, chubby? Naruto arched her eyebrows at the pink-haired girl and said, you know, I think you enjoy me calling you bubblegum, or why else would you keep calling me chubby? Bubblegum. And to answer your question, this will be the first time I am out of this village. Sakura and Sasuke were taken back by her response, which went unnoticed by the blonde girl, who was now taking out a sketchbook and pencil from one of her bags. Naruto turned around to look at the open gates and started to sketch. It will be a while before Kakashi would be here, that much Naruto was certain. The raven-haired teen watched in fascination as the blonde girl sketched the gates. Her face was crunched with concentration. He had never seen Naruto look so concentrated, but he had never seen her draw, so this must be an exception. Sasuke had never really thought that Naruto would have such a girly pastime. The girl acted so much like boy. Take a picture, it will last longer. Naruto said as she carefully drew the character of fire into the gates. Sasuke blushed for being caught staring and shook his head before saying, how long have you been? Long enough, Naruto said, answering his unfinished question. The Hokage Oji-san believed that I should have at least one girly hobby. Honestly, I can be girly when I want to be. But I honestly hate acting like a girl, and Hokage Oji-san knows it. You shouldn't keep calling the Hokage Oji-san. Sakura said harshly to her teammate. Don't you know the consequence of disrespecting the Hokage? Naruto carefully put her pencil and sketchbook back in her bag and stood out to look at the pink-haired girl. Curling her lips at her, Naruto wondered how she could explain to her teammate about her disrespecting him without making the Hokage looking like a pervert. I have known the Hokage Oji-san for as long as I could remember. Naruto answered truthfully. I had always called him that, and as I grew older, he didn't bother to correct me. But it isn't right to call him Oji-san. It isn't right to hurt your teammates. Naruto rebutted. It isn't right to be late for a mission, but yet we are here waiting for our late sensei for another 20 minutes. Well, he is a Junin. Naruto snorted and crossed her arms at her. The other senseis came early to pick up the other genin, but only our sensei was 3 hours late. She said dryly. So I think you should make a better excuse of him being late. Honestly, I truly dislike sensei when he is like this. Well, I am glad to see that you dislike my tardy habits. All 3 genin turned to see Kakashi with a backpack along with Tazuna. Since you are here, I believe that it is time to go. Tazuna looked at the excited blonde girl and wondered if the girl was truly a ninja. She was bouncing around yesterday and today too. He watched the blonde girl with guilty eyes, which went unnoticed by the 3 genin. However, Kakashi noticed the guilt and narrowed his eye in suspicion before going back to its normal lazy look. As the group continued their trip, it was rather quiet except for the occasional chuckle from Naruto at the sight of something new. Kakashi looked at his student and smiled at seeing her smile, not smirking or the occasional fake grins she would occasionally be sported in. Tazuna-san, Sakura asked. Tazuna looked at her with slightly annoyed look on his face, but Naruto thought that it was because she interrupted him from drinking the sake. She honestly hated drunks and it was taking all her willpower not to grab the bottle and throw it. What? You're from Nami no Kuni, right? Yeah. What about it? Sakura turned towards Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, do they have ninjas in that country too? Naruto was surprised to see Kakashi in teacher mode. Not once since they became his students did they see him in this mode. She was glad to see that his face still had a bored look. He wouldn't be Kakashi without it. No, not in Nami no Kuni, but in most other countries, the culture and customs may be different, but hidden villages exist, and so do ninjas. Kakashi said as he pulled out a scroll marked Kakashi-sensei's ninja food for thought. I am afraid to ask, but why the hell do you carry that around with you? Naruto asked. Not that I am glad, because that will be useful if we get lost, but still, it is weird. You never know when it will comes up in conversation, Naruto. Kakashi said. Naruto arched her eyebrows in disbelief and said. It actually comes up in conversations before this. Kakashi nodded and the blonde girl shook her head at him, muttering under her breath about unbelievable sensei. He chuckled at the girl before continuing on with his lecture about the villages and the cages. Wow, Hokage-sama is the best. Sakura squealed and clapped her hands as she had said this. Naruto clasped her hands behind her head and said, I can't really believe that Hokage Oji-san is that powerful. He is so old and pervert. Kakashi sighed at his student's lack of respect to authority. It was so hard to believe at times that Naruto was the daughter of his sensei, considering the fact that his sensei had been very respectful to authority. But, don't worry. There won't be any ninja combat in AC rank mission. Kakashi said as he ruffled Sakura's hair. Naruto snapped her finger in disappointment to the disbelief of Sakura. Of course not. Kakashi said as he laughed at the mere idea of them fighting ninjas. Tazuna was quiet, which did not go unnoticed by Sasuke, Kakashi or Naruto. The puddle that the group passed by did not go unnoticed by Kakashi either. The next thing the group knew, 2 ninjas had Kakashi wrapped up in a spiked chain and basically torn him into pieces. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura screamed as the 2 nin looked at the group with dreadful eyes. One down, now for the blonde. The next thing Naruto realized, both of them were either side of her. Naruto immediately kicked the guy on her right and at the same time, punched the man on the left. This had sent the 2 chunins flying. Sasuke immediately jumped up and threw both a shuriken and kunai, pinning the spiked chain to a tree. Both nin tried to get the chain to budge but couldn't. In their desperation to get the chain loose, both didn't notice Sasuke and Naruto come up at them. Sasuke sent one of them flying with a kick while Naruto took out a kunai and plunged it on the Chunin's chest. Sasuke stared at his teammate and couldn't make out the emotions that are running through her mind when she stared at the corpse. The other enemy ninja took off towards Tazuna, making Sakura pull out a kunai and stand in front of him. Both Sasuke and Naruto took off after him. We will never make it on time. All seemed lost until Kakashi clotheslined the ninja. Kakashi-sensei, you are alive. Sakura was happy to say the least. Naruto didn't say anything to them, instead deciding to look at the Chunin's body with guilt and disgust. She wanted to scrub her hands from the filth of his blood, but there was no sight of water. How could she kill him? She was no better than the monster inside of her. Was it truly all right for me to kill him? Good job, you three. Glad no one was injured. I am glad to see that you reacted fast enough, Naruto. I should be happy to be praised, but I don't feel so happy. Naruto muttered as she stared at the body. Kakashi frowned and made a mental note to have a private talk with Naruto when things settle down. He turned to look over at Tazuna and his frown vanished, a calm, serious face now apparent. Mr. Tazuna, I would like to have a word with you. I really can't see anything because of this stupid thick mist. Naruto muttered as the boat driver glared at her for talking. She looked down at her hands and felt another wave of hatred and guilt coming through. She shouldn't feel guilty for killing the man, he was going to kill her teammates after all. Naruto, that was the point, we need to be very careful now. Kakashi sighed at his student, who crossed her arms and reluctantly nodded her head. I know that, sensei. Keep your voices down. We need to cut off the engine and row from here on out. If Gato find us, we would be in big trouble. Kakashi remembered the conversation he had earlier with the bridge builder. Who is after you, Tazuna-san? AC rank mission is for bandits and highwaymen, not against enemy ninja. So out with it. Tazuna sighed as he took out his hat and admitted, you are right, this job is most likely outside of your duties. It turns out that a very dangerous man is after my life. Very dangerous man. You've probably at least heard his name before. The wealthy shipping magnate, a man named Gato. Huh, Gato from that Gato company. He is said to be the world's few extremely wealthy people. Yes, officially he runs a large shipping company, but secretly he sells drugs and other illegal items using ninjas and gang members to take over business and countries. He's a very nasty man. It was about a year ago when he set his eyes on Nami no Kuni through money and violence. He quickly took control of the country's shipping industry. Basically, he is running the whole country. Naruto said as she looked over at the tied-up Chunin, who glared at her. Yes, Gato now has a monopoly on all business traffic in the country. The only thing he has to fear now is the completion of the bridge. Now that makes sense, Sakura said as she went to a deep thinking pose. You are building the bridge, which means you are in the way. So those ninjas were hired by Gato? Sasuke asked. Naruto rolled her eyes at her teammate and sarcastically asked, who else would it be? My grandmother. Honestly, that had to be a very stupid question. Who else do you think would hire such people? Sasuke glared at her while Sakura gritted her teeth at her teammate for disrespecting the raven-haired teen. Kakashi, on the other hand, chuckled and shook his head at the girl. Naruto raised her eyebrows at them and shrugged her shoulders. Anyways, that is exactly why Gato wants me dead. Please. Tazuna dropped to his knees, his hat forgotten on the ground next to him. I beg you to help me, help my country. We don't have much money, not enough for the expensive B-rank mission. I will gladly pay you for an B rank after the bridge is completed. Tazuna said before adding, if you quit the mission now, I will definitely be killed. Don't worry about it. If I die, my cute 10-year-old grandson will just cry for a few days. Oh yes, and my daughter will live a sad life hating Konoha ninjas forever. Naruto looked down to her feet and curled her lips in determination. She didn't want another kid to lose their family, and she knew all too well what happens to kids that are left alone. She had spent a year in the streets and knew the horrors. No kid deserved to know it. The whole year that she had spent living in the streets had been the worst year of her life. Till this day, she could still remember the horrors of the streets and nothing she can do will erase them. Kakashi-sensei, I believe that we should help him. Naruto said softly. I never had family, so I know what it is like to be left alone in the streets to fend for yourself. I will be damned if I let another kid know the horrors. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Does my face say that I am kidding? Kakashi smiled underneath his mask while Tazuna looked at the girl with awe. Sasuke and Sakura were surprised to see the seriousness in her face. Both of them had thought that Naruto would oppose this. They frowned and wonder what Naruto meant by the horror of the streets. Tazuna-san, it looks like we have avoided detection so far, but just in case, we will take the route that has vegetation. It will make the enemies harder to spot us. Thanks. It is bad enough that I can't see anything, but we are going through a bunch of plants too. Naruto muttered, rubbing the back of her neck. The plants better be pretty enough that it want to make me draw it. Naruto stopped talking and was gawking at the country. She had never been to another country, even though it seemed like the village had seen better days, it still looked amazing to her. She had a sudden urge to draw the village but held it till the boat came to stop at a small dock. This is it for me. The boatman said. Goodbye and good luck. Yeah, thank you so much. Naruto furrowed her eyebrows as she watched the boatman use the motor to get away from them. She crossed her arms as they walked through the path. She was worried for the whole team and was silently regretting for being rash. Gato was a filthy rich man, so how can they be sure that he didn't hire a higher level ninja? Maybe he thinks that Tazuna is dead. A sound off to their right alerted the squad and Naruto launched a shuriken at it. The blonde girl was starting to become a little bit jumpy now. Naruto. What the hell? Sakura yelled at her teammate for jumping the gun like that. She got even more upset at seeing Naruto had nearly hit a rabbit. Naruto waved her hand off at her teammate's words and looked carefully at the white rabbit. Odd, that was what she could definitely describe the rabbit. At this time of the year, the rabbit should be brown, not white. So why was it white? There must be an explanation for this. Everyone get down now. Just after Kakashi finished warning his squad, a large object came spinning out of the trees, flying just inches above everyone and slamming into a nearby tree. On top of the sword was a topless man with the same camouflage pants as the Chunins that they met early. Bandages cover his lower face and his headband tied at an angle on his head. Well, if it isn't Kurigakure missing Nin Momochi Zabuza. Everybody, get back. This one is on a whole other level. Kakashi's opponent was quiet as Kakashi reached for his headband. Naruto licked her lips in anticipation, knowing that they will now know what was behind that headband. Everyone in the group wonder what he hid behind the mask and headband. It will be a little tough unless I do this. So you are Sharingan, Kakashi? Sorry, but the old man is mine. Sharingan. As in the Uchiha clan's Kekkei Genkai. No, it couldn't be, because from what I read about the clans, only someone born into the clan can inherit it, but Kakashi isn't related to them, is he? He certainly doesn't have the classical looks that are typically associated with the Uchiha clan. Naruto thought, now wondering why Kakashi was called the copy ninja. Surround and protect Tazuna-san. Do not enter the fight. That's the teamwork here that will keep you alive. Zabuza. First, Kakashi said as he lifted the headband from his eye. Fight me. Naruto gasped at the sight of the Sharingan. She didn't know anything about that Kekkei Genkai except for the fact that it copies jutsus. The sight of the Sharingan was not one that she had been expecting, but now she was curious to know how he got the eye. Ah, I already get to see the famous Sharingan. I am honored. Naruto did a quick glance at Sasuke and saw the troubled expression on his face. It must be hard for him to look at the eye, if it had been her clan's legendary Kekkei Genkai. It was pity that she had no clan, but she didn't know anything about her deceased family. Naruto wasn't even sure that Uzumaki was her family's last name. When I was a member of Kurigakure's assassin team, I kept a handbook. It included information of you. And this is what it said. The man, who has copied over 1,000 jutsu, copy ninja Kakashi. Now let us end all the talking. I have to kill that old man. But, Kakashi, it seems I have to beat you first. In the blink of an eye, Zabuza and his large sword both vanished from the tree only to reappear on top of the water. Is he standing on water? Sakura asked in disbelief. Do you want me to answer that serious or sarcastically? If I were you, I would lean towards sarcasm. Naruto supplied helpfully. Sakura glared at her, but the blonde girl was too tense to glare right back at her. Kurigakure no Jutsu. With that, a thick fog appeared and Zabuza vanished. He is a missing nin, so he must have some speciality and he must be dangerous if Kakashi-sensei told us not to fight him. He will come after me first. Kakashi said, warning them of what will come. Momochi Zabuza, as a member of Kurigakure, he was known as an expert in silent killing. You don't even notice until you are already dead. It is not like I can use the Sharingan perfectly. You guys be careful. 8 points, the throat, spinal column, lungs, liver, the jugular vein, the subclinical artery, the kidney, and the heart, so many choices, what vital, vulnerable place should I pick? Naruto looked and saw Sasuke was terrified, but she could feel a presence nearby her. It reeked of bloodlust, that much can be certain. She had to do something to snap him out of it. Your clan must be rolling on their graves to see how frickin' scared you are. Sasuke heard Naruto's voice and looked at her in surprise. The blonde girl smirked at him and he silently gave her a nod. Naruto frowned as she tried to gather chakra into her hand. She hadn't perfected this technique, in fact it was a long way from being perfected, but maybe it was time to test the experiment to see how much more it needed to be perfected, but first she needed to warn them. Everyone jump. Sasuke, Sakura and Tazuna jumped up as Naruto slammed her fist on the ground, making the nearby area rumble like a small earthquake and the ground beneath her become a small crater. Kakashi noticed Zabuza was off balance due to Naruto's attack and he pressed his advantage by reappearing behind him, jabbing kunai into his spine. A second Zabuza appeared behind Kakashi, which did not go unnoticed by Naruto. Sensei. Behind you. It was too late as Zabuza's weapon cleft clean through Kakashi, who melted into a puddle of water. A water bunchen? No way. In this mist, he copied it. Don't move, Zabuza. It is over. Thanks for the shockwave, Naruto. Kakashi now had his kunai to Zabuza's neck. The blonde girl has got some strength, but do you really think this is over? You don't get it. There is no way you can defeat me with your monkey-like imitations. Hee, but that was impressive of you. While the blonde girl screamed for everyone to jump, you made the clone, and while I was thrown off by the shockwave, used my own Kurigakure technique to watch me. Too bad for you though. A voice came from behind Kakashi, making his eyes widen. But, I am also not that easy. The Zabuza that Kakashi had cornered melted into a puddle. Why the hell do they keep using the water clone? It is making the fight last way longer. Naruto knew very well that this fight was way out of her league, but that didn't mean she didn't want any action. Zabuza swung his sword in a wide arc, making Kakashi duck while the swordsman stuck his sword into the ground so he could swing his body and kick Kakashi away towards the water. Kakashi slammed into the water and for some reason found it much harder to move his limbs than normally. What? This water is heavy. Hey, fool. Zabuza said as he formed hand seals for a jutsu. Suiro no Jutsu. Before Kakashi could escape, a large sphere of water surrounded him while Zabuza stood off to its side with one arm in the prison, keeping it functional. You tried to escape to the water. Big mistake. Now I have you in an inescapable prison. If he was trying to be funny, then he failed. Even the Hokage is funnier than he is. Naruto thought as she watched one of the destroyed water clone reformed itself, slowly drawing its sword as it stared down the genin. Hee, wearing those headbands and acting like ninjas. A real ninja is someone who has survived numerous brushes with death. Only when you're good enough to be listed in the bingo book then can you start calling yourself ninjas. You are not ninjas. Naruto barely ducked from the under kick from Zabuza. If it hadn't been for her survival instincts from the streets, she wouldn't have been able to dodge it. Not bad, but not good enough to save you. Naruto could see that large sword held above the clone's head about to crash down on her. The position that he was in told her that he will swing his sword to her right, so as the sword came down, Time seemed to slow for the blonde girl and she rolled to the left and drew out her kunai. She smiled when she saw an opening and as the sword came down impacting on the dirt, Naruto used her strength to fling the kunai at the water clone watching as the kunai pierced its chest making it dissolve into another puddle. Naruto immediately got to her feet as Sasuke landed close to her. Take Tazuna-san and run. You have no chance of beating him. As long as he is keeping me trapped in this prison he can't move. The water clone can't go very far from his real body. Just run away. That is admirable Kakashi, but this ends now. Zabuza made a single hand seal and another water clone appeared on the edge of the lake. Naruto looked at her hand and knew that this was the last one to use that technique. It took tremendous amounts of control and her control was now average for a genin, but it will be a few more years before the control will be good enough for this technique. Is he mad? The man will kill him before going straight towards us and then he will kill us. We are newbies so we have no chance of defeating him, but Naruto grinned to the horror of her teammates, but Sasuke was also taken back by the gleam in the girl's eyes. What is it like living without eyebrows, freak? Zabuza glared at the smiling blonde girl while everyone gawked at her. Put this in your damn bingo, the woman who will one day surpass any of the strong kunoichi. Uzumaki Naruto, Konoha Genin. For added emphasis Naruto stuck her tongue out. Hey bastard, I got a plan. Sasuke looked at her and was taken back by the confident smile on her face. Oh, now teamwork from you. Naruto's eyes twitched, but she remembered the situation at hand and forgave him, for now. Zabuza was getting annoyed and summoned another Mizu clone from the previous destroyed one who blocked the genin from making it to their sensei. What are you doing? Run away. This fight was over the moment I was caught. Our duty is to protect Tazuna-san. Did you forget that? Sensei, don't take any offense at my words, but just shut the hell up and let us do our job. I am not going to abandon my teammate, that just makes me worse than scum. And I am not scum. Kakashi had to smile inwardly at his students taking his lesson to heart, but against Zabuza this was suicide. Naruto looked at Tazuna and quietly asked, Oji-san, would you mind? Tazuna looked down at the floor. Well, I planted this seed myself. I am not going to now say that I desire to live so much that I would stop you. Naruto smiled at his words. I am sorry guys. Fight as much as you want. You hear that? Sasuke asked, giving her a cocky look that she hated so much. Naruto grinned at him. Are you ready? Zabuza chuckled at them and Naruto furrowed her eyebrows at him. You guys will never grow up. He declared. The blonde girl kept a cool mask at him, which unnerved the missing nin, and softly asked. May I ask why do you say such a thing? The swordsman grinned and looked at his hands with such delight that it chilled her to the bone. When I was about your age, these hands were already dyed with blood. Naruto looked at her own hands and remembered the Chunin that she had killed so easily. She gulped as she remembered the gaze look in his eyes, the hatred in his brother's eyes and the need that she now has to cleanse her hand of his blood. The man was a monster, or why else can he talk about killing so easily? Naruto knew right then that she didn't want to end up like him. She bit her lips, hoping that it would stop her from trembling in fear. The taste of her blood made it worse instead of better. Devil, Zabuza, Kakashi muttered. He looked at his students and wasn't surprised to see the fear in their eyes or to see them trembling with said fear, but he was surprised by the fact that Naruto was biting her lips so hard. This had to be one of the most unexpected things that he had ever seen from her. Ah! Zabuza's voice snapped him from his thoughts. So you have heard a little about it. Long ago, in the Hidden Mist Village, also called the Blood Mist Village, there was a final obstacle in becoming a ninja, Kakashi said, looking tense as he said this. You even know about that graduation exam? The dark look on Zabuza's eyes made Naruto wonder what was the graduation exam. That exam? Naruto asked, looking at the two older ninjas with curiosity. Zabuza chuckled. Naruto looked at the missing nin in anger and annoyance but tried to keep a cool head as she thought of a way to phrase her question. She could feel sweat on her forehead clearer each passing minute that Zabuza kept chuckling. What is this graduation exam that you did? Zabuza didn't answer, instead he continued with his dark evil chuckles. The Leaf Genins looked alarmed at his laughter. What was so funny about the question? After all, she had asked a good question if she dare say so herself. After the swordsman stopped his evil laughter, he turned to the three Genins and gave them a dark look. Fights to the death between students. He answered. The three Genins and Tazuna were alarmed at this declaration. Naruto stared at Zabuza and clenched her hands into a fist. To kill your own classmates, that had to be one of the cruelest things that a kid could be forced to do. She couldn't fathom the feelings that those kids had felt. Friends who have trained and eaten at the same table are pitted against each other and go at it until one of them loses his life. The swordsman looked at them in amusement and continued. These are friends who had helped each other and shared dreams. Terrible, muttered a shell-shocked Sakura. It is barbaric, Naruto stated. 10 years ago, the hidden mist graduation exam was forced to change. Kakashi looked tense as he said this. This change came after the previous year when a devil appeared. Sakura looked at their sensei with curiosity and asked. Change. Neither Zabuza nor Kakashi answered the question. What change? What did this devil do? Sakura yelled out in frustration. After a minute of silence, Zabuza answered the question. Without pause or hesitation, a young boy, who was not even a ninja, had killed over 100 of the graduating students. He closed his eyes in fondness. That sure was fun. In the blink of an eye, the clone slammed into Sasuke, sending him to the ground and standing over him with a foot on his chest. Die, Zabuza said, deepening his step on Sasuke's stomach. Sasuke-kun. Sakura was worried for Sasuke even though he had been the rookie of the year. She just saw him get taken down like it was nothing. On the surface, Naruto looked like the epitome of calm, but in the inside the blonde girl was pissed. Nobody hurts her teammates even if he was too cocky for his own good. It was her job to remind him that he wasn't that great, through him being her friend was a bonus. That is my friend that you are hurting, freak. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Over a dozen clones of Naruto appeared, each with a kunai in hand. Zabuza was truly impressed that a genin knew such a high chakra cost technique and could use it well. Ah, shadow clones in such a large amount. Naruto quietly made the signal for the shadow clones to start attacking the man. All of the shadow clones leapt upon the mist assassin, to the annoyance of the original. That wasn't how she was hoping that they would do it, but it would have to do. She frowned as she watched the swordsman spun his sword around in omnidirectional arc around him, destroying the clones. She grinned when she realized that he wasn't paying attention to them but at the clones themselves. As this was happening, Naruto dug into her pack and withdrew a weapon, hoping that her spun-on-the-moment plan would work. Sasuke, catch! Naruto tossed him a windmill shuriken and she noticed his look of understanding as he caught it, and she grinned at him, which made him realize that she looked nicer when she smiled. Shuriken are useless against me, the clone said as Sasuke took to the air, launching the projectile with all his might. The clone could only watch as the shuriken went right past him towards the true Zabuza. At least you were smart enough to target the real me, but it won't work. Amateur, Zabuza said as he caught it, only to notice a split second later another one just under it. All three genin watched with anticipation as the second shuriken came closer and closer, though all but Naruto's hopes were dashed. The blonde girl smiled as the Naruto sitting on the ground vanished in a puff of smoke. Never insult me, freak. The second shuriken turned out to be the real Naruto, who threw another windmill shuriken at Zabuza, watching with a huge smirk on her face as he let go of the prison to dodge, and her smirk turned into a smile as she saw that she had managed to cut his cheek with her aim. That cheeky brat. Just as Zabuza was about to launch the shuriken that he had caught at her but was stopped by something. He turned his head to come face to face with Kakashi's Sharingan eye. Now Zabuza, it is game over. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura screamed, happy to see that their sensei was now able to join the battle once more. Naruto finally surfaced from the water, trying her best to swim back to surface. She was coughing along the way to the surface, as she was trying to gasp for breath. I don't even get a word of thanks. she said angrily when she got to land. What am I to them chopped live? I did the hard work as well. Sakura smiled apologetically at the young girl, who rolled her eyes as a response, but a proud grin could be seen on the girl's face. Naruto, great plan, all of you have grown up. The blonde smiled and pretended to blush as she said. Ah, shucks sensei, you are getting me embarrassed. The pink-haired girl eyebrow twitched at her teammate and was severely tempted to punch her teammate on the nose for trying to be funny in such a serious situation. However, she didn't, knowing that the girl will give her a lecture of doing such a thing. I got distracted and released the jutsu. Naruto crossed her arms, indignant of the man's reluctance to admit that her plan hadn't just distracted him. It had surprised him, since he didn't consider that she had the brains to do such a thing, or that she was actually brave to do such a reckless plan. Also, she practically forced him to release the jutsu. It seemed like Kakashi had the same thought. Wrong. You didn't release it, Kakashi said, glaring at the nuke nin. You were forced to release it. I will tell you that I don't fall for the same jutsu twice. What will you do? The blonde-haired girl licked her lips in anticipation as Zabuza jumped back and with precision, going through all 42 hand seals of a Suiden jutsu. Her breath hitched at the sight of Kakashi going through the same hand seals at the exact speed as Zabuza. Was this what a Junin can do? Suiden. Water Dragon Blast no Jutsu. Both shinobi cried out while the Genin squad and Tazuna Gap, as two large dragons made entirely of water, emerged and crashed into each other. I am so going to learn it, or the very least get enough chakra control until I am able to do such a cool jutsu. Naruto thought, unconsciously nodding her head as her sensei and Zabuza go head to head just after the dragon collided. Her frown deepened when she noticed the panic look on Zabuza's face. The man looked like he was seeing a ghost when there is no actual ghost, so why did he have such a look? There must be some kind of trick in it. Through them all. What the hell were they talking about? Hey, all you're doing is copying me. You can't beat me, you monkey bastard. Naruto knew that it was a bad idea to laugh, but in all honesty, she couldn't help it. In actual fact, this whole situation was just messed up, and it was all because this troublesome client hadn't bothered to mention his problem in the first place, through he did have no choice. Even she could understand the motive of why he didn't tell them. Suiden. Water explosion no jutsu. The shout snapped her out of her thoughts, and she watched as Zabuza was carried by the huge vortex of water as it carried him off. Must he go overboard? Naruto asked herself as Zabuza's body was slammed against a large tree, followed by a shuriken in each limb, which prevented him from moving. Sakura and Sasuke arched their eyebrows at the girl, who simply gave a sheepish smile as a response, causing them to sigh at the blonde. How the girl can be so perceptive at times they did not know. Through they knew that Naruto could be quite the idiot when she wants to be. Are you sure that you are a ninja? Naruto's lips twitched at Tazuna's comment, and she was about to take out a kunai and throw at the old man, but stopped, feeling a sense of foreboding. Something told her that something dangerous, and it wasn't the air around them that was telling her. Naruto, you aren't supposed to kill the client. Sakura's shrill voice said, snapping her from her thoughts. The blonde pouted and asked, can I maim him then? I won't be going against the rules. Sasuke and Sakura rolled their eyes at the blonde-haired girl, giving her a pointed look that caused her to scowl at them. Didn't they understand that the sot was insulting her? She opened her mouth to tell them that, but before she could, something unexpected happened. Before Kakashi could even plunge his kunai into Zabuza's neck, two Senbon needles droved into the nuke nin's neck, killing him. All three genins gawked at this, including Naruto, who looked ready to fight the person that had just killed Zabuza. Hehe, you're right, he's dead, a young teen said, wearing a swirl mask with the mist insignia on it. Thank you very much. I have been searching for the opportunity to kill Zabuza for a very long time. Naruto blinked her eyes at the sight in front of her before gritting her teeth. There was a need for her to knock someone out. This was so unfair that this person had been able to do something that they couldn't do. Not only that, this individual seems to look like the same age as her, and the others perhaps a little bit older. That mask, you're a hidden mist hunter nin. Impressive. You are correct. Her teeth were starting to hurt from her clenching her teeth, but she was just so goddamn angry that a kid her age was able to defeat him without any trouble. Her temper started to cool down and the blonde started to think about what Kakashi had just said. This person admitted that he was a hunter nin. Naruto frowned. Something was suspicious about this guy. She wasn't saying this because he defeated Zabuza. No, it is the weapon that he had used that made it suspicious. Senbons, they are never used for assassination if her readings were correct because they don't have much of a killing power, hence the reason why they use kunais. The only way a person can kill using a senbon is to hit in a critical area. Are you really a hunter nin? Naruto asked herself, looking at the masked person with a thoughtful look. Or are you a helper? Naruto baka, why the hell would you ask such a stupid question? Sakura yelled, bobbing her head. The blonde opened her mouth to tell her the reason but decided to close it. There was a probability that she was wrong and he was truly a hunter nin, but there was also a chance that he is a helper, which if it was true then none of them stood a chance of fighting this guy now. Simply put, neither her nor Sasuke were strong enough and Kakashi was worn down. Damn it, I will have to let this guy go now. Fighting him would lead into a very one-sided battle. Naruto thought grimly, looking at the boy in front of her with tiredness. This is so unfair. Naruto couldn't help but say. He was able to defeat Zabuza as if it was a piece of cake and he wasn't some weakling. Do we suck or what? Kakashi walked over to his student and patted her head, causing her to look at him. Slowly, the sliver-haired Junin noticed the weariness in her eyes and a sense of dread washed over him. The blonde must have noticed something that they didn't. In this world, there exist kids younger than you yet stronger than me. Nodding, the blonde looked at the boy wearily and then looked at her sensei, before sighing. She knew what she had to do since it was only the right thing to do. Sensei, he isn't a hunter nin. He is using senbon, she whispered. And why hasn't he burned the body yet? Aren't all hunter nin kill bodies on sight? This is suspicious, sensei. There's a chance that he is working for Zabuza. Kakashi nodded and kept a huge smile plastered on his face while in the inside, he was grimacing. He could engage in battle but he will not win in this condition. While Naruto and Sasuke were good in fighting, they weren't in the level needed to fight this guy. It seems like he will have to play the boy's game. Your battle is now over, and now I must dispose of this body. Since it seems to be a body with many secrets, farewell. And with a simple shunshin the young hunter nin vanished with Zabuza's body. Now, we have to get Tazuna-san back to his home. Kakashi announced, giving Naruto a look that they will discuss about her suspicions to the others later. Let's go. Come over to my house and relax for a while. But before any of them could take a single step, Kakashi fell over flat on his face. Naruto sighed and picked up her sensei, already knowing that it would be a long and boring walk. It had been a day since they arrived to Tazuna's house and their sensei was still fast asleep to the blonde's frustration. They needed to discuss about the hunter nin and her teammates were planning to take Kakashi's mask in the corner while Tazuna was simply taking a sip of his sake, staring out of space while his daughter talked to him. Naruto, aren't you at least one bit curious about what's behind Kakashi-sensei's mask? Of course I am, but this isn't the time to do such a thing. Naruto said harshly. There is a chance that a stronger enemy might come and harm us. And we don't have the necessary training to beat them. But Naruto, we have Kakashi. So what if we have Kakashi? We can't be weak and rely on him. I didn't become a shinobi to be some pansy. Naruto said angrily, slamming her hand on the table. For all we know that vile man might hired someone to attack us now that sensei is passed out. We need to prepare ourselves for the worst case scenario. Do you think that we are strong enough to handle a Junin? Because I don't think so. Sakura and Sasuke rubbed their necks at the blonde's outburst, not knowing how to respond to the girl's words. They looked at the blue-eyed girl, who looked ready to kill them for acting like a child. You know, Naruto-chan, you should learn to relax a little and you must learn to keep your temper in check. All three genins whipped their heads to look at Kakashi, whose eyes were now wide opened. Sakura was angry at the fact that Naruto had ruined any chance of finding out what was behind the mask, while Sasuke felt a little bit frightened, but this couldn't be seen. He had never known that Naruto could be so scary. Well, you can't exactly blame me, can you? I mean, this isn't the time to be having a picnic. Naruto retorted, crossing her arms at her sensei. Since you know, the hunter nin was a fake. Naruto Baka, aren't you taking that a little bit? You were right about this isn't the time to be having a picnic, Naruto-chan. Sensei, let me remind you, if you call me Naruto-chan again, then I will personally make sure that you will never have kids again. Naruto said, cracking her fist as she said this. She grinned and looked at Sasuke. You too, Sasuke. I know you won't ever call me by that vile word, but this is a heads up. Kakashi and Sasuke gulped at this. Anyways, Naruto is right. About what, sensei? Sakura asked, furrowing her eyebrows at her. Kakashi sighed and ruffled his own hair. The hunter nin is indeed a fake, he said. Naruto was lucky to realize this and was smart to inform me instead of engaging a battle with the nin. Oh, 1, 2, 3, Naruto thought, counting down for the inevitable reaction. Immediately, the two other genins blanched at this, along with Tazuna, while Tsunami looked weary at this proclamation. You got to be kidding me, sensei. Sakura yelled, realizing what their sensei had just said. You check it yourself, Zabuza was dead. Yes, I did, but that was most likely a temporary death. Sakura, you are probably the smartest one out of the three of us. Did you notice the weapons that he had used? Naruto asked, flickering her eyes at her teammates. He used Senbons. I presume that you studied extensively, so I will presume you know that Senbons have very little killing power. Naruto said to her teammate. Yes, oh, Sakura said, realizing the point her teammate was trying to make. You mean to tell me that he had aimed spots in which that it could make it seem like he was truly dead? Exactly. But how would he know? Sakura asked. I honestly don't know, Naruto admitted. I haven't studied that far ahead. All I know is that hunter nins are supposed to dispose of the body immediately, and that Senbon have very little killing power unless hitting critical areas. This is because hunter nins are supposed to know about the body, Naruto. Kakashi explained to them. So for them to put someone in temporary death, it would be very easy to do. But why would he do something like this? Sasuke asked, finally speaking up since the conversation started. There's a possibility that he was there to save Zabuza, not kill him. Kakashi answered. Aren't you thinking too much? Hunter nins are supposed to kill nuke nins. Tazuna said. It is a possibility that we can't ignore. Naruto said dryly. Ignoring it means that we are dead. As much as I want to ignore it, I don't want to die. Naruto, don't speak so casually about dying. Sighing, the blonde clasped her hands behind her head and said. Death is inevitable. All of us will die and people die every day, so I guess I can talk casually about death. Chubby. Bubblegum. Naruto mimicked, tilting her head at the girl. As much as I want to hear the two of you have a catfight, this isn't the time. Kakashi said, glaring at his students. Now, Naruto was right, we can't ignore the possibility. With all the suspicion, we will prepare before it is too late. That's a shinobi rule. The only good rule that they have. Naruto supplied, looking quite weary at the mention of the shinobi rules. Ahem, whether Zabuza is dead or alive, there's no guarantee that Geto hasn't hired an even stronger shinobi. The blonde grinned at the mention of a stronger opponent. It was a dream of hers to be one of the strongest shinobi in the country, perhaps the world, and wasn't the best way to be stronger was to fight stronger opponents. She licked her lips at the thought of fighting stronger opponents. If she can defeat the strongest opponent, then she have fulfill her promise. Sensei, what do you mean preparing before it's too late? You can barely move, Sakura pointed out. Kakashi laughed at this and said. You guys will receive training. Training? Sakura asked, tilting her head at him. Naruto simply grinned at the mention of training, bouncing at this and looking ready to run out of the room. Kakashi smiled, knowing just how much the blonde loved to train. Sensei, what's a little training going to do? Our enemy is a ninja. You struggled even with the Sharingan. Sakura shouted. Naruto looked down at the floor, knowing that her teammate was right about the fact that their sensei had trouble with Zabuza. Yet, didn't they say small changes will lead to something bigger or something about that? Sakura, who saved me while I was struggling? Kakashi asked. He didn't bother to wait for the pink-haired girl's reply. You guys are growing rapidly. Ah, sucks. That makes me blush, Naruto said, pretending to blush. The two genins laughed at Naruto's words while Kakashi shook his head at his young genin's joke. You improved the most, Naruto, Kakashi said, causing everyone to stop laughing. I will take that as a compliment, the blonde said dryly. Kakashi sighed as the blue-eyed girl and said, but obviously, this is just training until I get better. You won't be able to defeat him without me. Way to go for stating the obvious, Captain, Naruto mumbled, leaning against the wall. But sensei, if Zabuza is alive he could attack at any time, so should we be training? I hate to agree with Bubblegum, but should we truly be training? I like the idea, and in theory this is a good idea, but he is alive and he can attack anytime, Naruto said, looking out at the window. About that, a person put in a momentary death situation will not be able to move for quite some time, so it will be a while before his body returns to normal, Kakashi said. So we train until then. What are we going to learn, sensei? Are you going to teach us some cool jutsu? Or is it that Shunshin that the fake guy used to get out of here? What? I am just so hyper for some strange reason. Kakashi smiled, happy to see that the young girl was giving a real smile, but a part of him was quite curious to know about the real reason for the fake smiles. It was nice to see the girl to be cheerful instead of being cynical. When we get outside, Naruto, I shall explain about the training, but right now help me up please. Since you are training us for once, I suppose I can help you, Naruto said, grinning at him. He sighed at the fake smile. The blonde whistled at the sight of the forest clearing. Her hands were itching to grab a piece of paper and to draw the scenery, as it had to be one of the most beautiful forests that she had been to, not that she had been to many. This was the curse of being an orphan and not knowing your own family. Family. Naruto shook her head at her thoughts and concentrated all of her thoughts on Kakashi and her team, wishing to forget about those sad times. Okay, we will now start the training. Naruto grinned at the mention of training, flickering her eyes towards the sky before looking back at her sensei. Now, can you tell us about the training we are about to do? I am going to teach you to climb trees. The blue-eyed girl blinked her eyes and said, Sensei, are you alright? Maybe we should take you to the hospital. You are going to climb trees without using your hands. Naruto, do you know any good hospital here? Sakura asked the blonde. Well, I could always go and ask Tazuna. Kakashi laughed at the blonde's words while Sakura and Sasuke slapped their foreheads, wondering what they deserved to have such an insane sensei. Naruto was praying that their sensei was mad, just so she could take him to the psychiatrist. What? There must be something wrong if a man reads porn in front of everyone. No, you two, I do not need to go to hospital, but it might be better if I show you what I mean, Kakashi said as he put his hands in a ram seal, and with his crutches walked up the tree until he was hanging from the branch by his feet. See, this is what I mean. I believe you, sensei, but this doesn't mean you are not going to the hospital to check your sanity. Kakashi shook his head and said, I am glad that you said this, and for your information, I am sane. Right. So sensei, how do we do this? Sakura asked, stopping Naruto from making a sarcastic comment. Good of you to ask, Sakura. You need to channel chakra through your feet to allow you to stick to the tree. It is hard to channel chakra into your feet, which will help you to increase your chakra control. This will help you to use less chakra when using jutsu. Kakashi pulled out 3 kunai and threw them towards his genin. Each kunai lay in front of their feet. Use those kunais to mark how high you make it up the tree, Kakashi said. Then use that mark as your goal and try to surpass it. You guys won't be good enough to just walk up the tree at first. So get some momentum and try running up the tree. Got it? Naruto rubbed her chin as she picked up the kunai. Looking at the tree, she tried to figure out the best way to figure out how to use her chakra properly. Out of everyone in the team, she had the most chakra. Something she had figured out during the last 2 years of the academy, and she had done a lot of training to fix that little issue. So how does she know that she had used her chakra effectively? Why aren't you in a hurry to climb the tree, Naruto? The blonde frowned and looked at her sensei before answering. I have no idea of knowing if I am using my chakra effectively. You will never know until you try. Very true, sensei, but there is a risk of me falling on my head, which might mean I get a concussion. Naruto said. And I don't want to have any mental problems like you. Kakashi arched his visible eyebrow at his student, who gave him a cheeky grin, and watched as the young girl concentrated of gathering her chakra. The ground around their feet glowed blue from the slightly flaring chakra. Well, I haven't imagined her getting that far. Kakashi thought as Naruto made it halfway through the tree before marking her progress. The young girl had leaped down gracefully for once instead of tumbling down. He looked at Sasuke, who made it only a few steps before the amount of chakra that he had used blew off. Sakura made it to the very top. Naruto scowled and looked at the tree before unconsciously nodding her head. Naruto, how are you and Sakura able to get so far while I simply blown off? I will tell you, for a price. A price? Naruto grinned and said, well, I will tell you if you say that I am better than you. Then you won't get your answer then, bastard. She said smugly as she closed her eyes to gather chakra. Kakashi rolled his eyes at the young girl's behavior, but a small smile could be seen on his face. There was no doubt in his mind, who was the glue that kept the team together, but the girl makes him worry at times. Several times had he seen the girl being too quiet and had a dazed look. It creeps him out. However, he knew better than to question the girl. Naruto had never understood why the girls fawn over Sasuke. Of course, she knew the reason, but it never truly made sense to her as to how do they think that they can heal someone's broken heart and make him happy. His whole family had been murdered, so how could they make him happy? She would ask Sakura, but she was eating lunch. That damn lucky girl. Kakashi had told her and Sasuke that they couldn't eat until they reached the mark that Sakura had reached. Their sensei was truly insane. Hey, dope. Naruto turned around and crossed her arms at her teammate. Call me a dope and I will inform your fangirls where your hiding place is. Sasuke paled at this, causing the young blonde to grin at him. Oh, how she loved the fact that she only had to use his fangirls to get him to stop calling her by that awful nickname. Now, if only she could use that threat on Sakura, when she called her chubby. Duly note. Good. So, Naruto, do you want me to give you some advice? Reluctantly, Sasuke nodded, causing the blonde to smile at him. It was nice to see that the boy would admit that she was better at him in something. Her teammate had too much pride. I will give you some advice if you would be able to do me a little favor. Sasuke raised his eyebrows at this. If he hadn't known Naruto, then he would presume the girl would ask for a date, but he did know the blonde and the girl wasn't a fangirl. It might be one of the reasons why he got along with her. What do you want? Money, paints, ramen, books, one of my jutsu. All very tempting, but no. Naruto gave a sly smile and said, I shall tell you about the favor when it is time for me to collect it. Just remind me when you collect this favor. Will do, Tem. Naruto said lazily as she stretched her body. Not once had she noticed the fact that Sasuke was blushing as she did this, and if she did notice, the girl didn't comment. All you need to do is to concentrate and not get distracted, meaning you must have a clear mind. Clear mind, got it. The blonde frowned and looked at her teammate, noticing that his whole face was red. Are you alright, Sasuke? I can take you to the doctor. She said, looking at him with concern. She never saw him so red in her life. I'm fine. Sasuke whizzed. The whiskered girl nodded, looking torn between believing him or whether or not to take him to the hospital so that he could be checked. In the end, she decided to believe him. Naruto grinned as she took a bite of the food that Tsunami made. Occasionally she looked at Sasuke, who was being more quiet than usual. He became awfully quiet after she gave him the tip. Sasuke-kun, Naruto, you both took a long time to finish today. What happened? Sakura asked, looking at the eating pair. Well, me and Sasuke-tem got so much stamina and chakra that is one factor to consider why we took so long. Also, Sasuke said that he was feeling unwell. Naruto said, after swallowing her food. Sakura and Naruto turned their attention to Sasuke, who was now coughing. The blonde promptly slapped the boy on the back, smiling when the boy was now able to swallow. Why do you guys bother to train so hard? No matter how hard you train, you are still no match for Getu's men. No matter what glorious claims you make or how hard you work when facing the strong, the weak will only end up getting killed. That's why we train, kid, and I train hard because I have something to prove and to keep a promise. I am not like you, kid. I don't sit down and cry. I would hate to be like you. You don't know anything about this country, yet you're being so nosy. Inari yelled. I am different from you, you're always clowning around and acting so cheerful, you don't know how hard life can be. That's it. No more little Miss Nice Girl. Everyone gasped when Naruto slammed her hand onto the table and they were shocked to see the anger in her eyes. Not even her teammates had ever seen her so angry. I don't know how hard life can be. I know what it is like to suffer. Hell, I have been suffering my whole life. Naruto said calmly, looking at the boy with anger. You like having your mother and grandfather. Well, good for you because I never knew my own family. Has the matron of your orphanage ever beaten you up for something you couldn't control? No. Well, you are damn lucky because I was. Have you ever seen the one person that treated you well die in front of your own eyes die, and you know that it was your fault? Well, I sure as hell did. Do you have to deal with glares and hateful remarks, saying things that would make any sane person cry? No. Well, I do. Don't say I don't know how to suffer because I have been suffering since I was born. Everyone watched in silence as the blonde stood up, having a cold look in her eyes. Kid, you don't know shit about true suffering. You got your family and this hell that you got will disappear one day and you will one day forget, but, for me, I will never forget. Sakura and Sasuke frowned as the blonde walked out of the house, slamming the door behind her. Inari began to sniffle before running up the stairs. Kakashi grimaced, wondering why the Hokage hadn't informed him that much detail of the past. She will tell you when the time is ready. That was the Hokage words before they left for the mission. I apologize to Zuna-san, but that's a sensitive subject for her. You can say that again, but is it really that bad for her? Kakashi nodded, looking trouble at some information that Naruto had just said. Sasuke and Sakura were really worried for their teammate. Not once since the formation of their team had they seen the young girl look so angry. Not even the time when one of her fanboys tried to make a move on her. Sakura was about to get up, but Kakashi's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Sakura, it isn't a wise idea to bring her back as it would just set her off. If she doesn't return tonight, then I will send either you or Sasuke to get her in the morning. Sakura nodded hesitantly at him. The last thing Kakashi needed was for Naruto to punch Inari. Meanwhile, Naruto went back to the clearing where they did, and just as she got to the center of the clearing, she allowed herself to cry. She hated crying, but that little kid made her remember her life before the Hokage had saved her from. He saved her from the orphanage and gave her a new start. Not once had he blamed her for what happened, even through it was all her fault that she died, and nothing the old man says or do can erase this detail. Before dying, she had asked her to become a strong kunoichi and to fulfill her dream. But am I doing it the way you wanted? Naruto sobbed, looking up at the night sky. I mean, I am not stupid, but I am not as strong as you would have wanted me to be. The blonde laughed bitterly and said, the more I spend time with them, the more I am afraid of forgetting about you. The wind brushed against her cheek, causing the girl to smile a little before continuing. Half of the time, I behave the way you would have behaved, and the other half of the time, I act like myself, but who am I? Am I a monster, or am I just a girl who been through too much? Throughout the whole night, Naruto spoke to the night sky as if it was the most normal thing to do. The next morning, everyone but Naruto was gathered around the table as Tsunami made breakfast. Naruto stayed out the whole night. Tazuna asked, rubbing the back of his neck as he looked at the bridge design in front of him. Yup. Ever since the argument with Inari. Kakashi said as he read his precious book. Knowing her, she may have used too much chakra and died by now. Sakura yawned as she took the plate that Tsunami offered her. I hope she's alright. A child all alone at night in the woods. Don't worry, Kakashi said, smiling at the young mother. She may not look like it, but she's a true ninja. I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me if she was dead. Sasuke grumbled. She always takes things too far. Back in the clearing, Naruto was sleeping quite peacefully, covered in dirt and grass stains while a stranger crouched over her body. The stranger looked like he was contemplating whether to kill her or not, but instead the person grabbed her shoulder and shook it. You will catch a cold sleeping in a place like this. The stranger said. Huh, who are you? Naruto asked, rubbing her eyes at the stranger. The stranger didn't answer, but the blonde noticed the plants in her basket, causing the blonde to believe that the person was simply a civilian grabbing some random plants. Mind if I help you? The stranger smiled and nodded her head at her, describing the plant for her to pick. Naruto grinned and went to straight in, helping the kind person that had woken her up from her sleep. As they collected, the blonde couldn't shake the feeling that they had met before, but she shook that thought away because there was no way that she could forget the girl's face, right? So, these plants are for medicine, right? Naruto asked, dangling the plant in front of the person. She nodded at her and said, thank you for helping me out. It is no problem, but you sure work early. Naruto commented, putting the plant into the basket. The girl smiled at her and said, you too. What are you doing here at this time of the morning? Well, I was planning to train. Training? So you are a shinobi? Naruto nodded her head and said, yes, and I plan to be one of the best. Why are you training? Many reasons. One of them is to become stronger than I already am. Naruto answered, I want to be stronger than the Hokage. But you already look strong. The girl replied. The blonde looked down at her hands before answering softly. I am not strong because if I was, then that incident wouldn't have happened. What incident? Naruto didn't answer and the girl didn't push her to her pleasure. Do you have anyone special in your life, Naruto-san? If you are speaking in romance, then hell no. What sane person would ever wish to date me? But if you speaking about someone precious to me, then yes, I do. The memories of the kids in the orphanage along with Iruka, Hokage, Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke came to her mind as she said this. You will become strong. Let's meet again somewhere. Oh, and you should know. Naruto listened intently to what the girl was about to say to her. I'm a